This meeting is.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first book talk of 2023, Making Black Girls Count in Math Education, a Black feminist vision for transformative teaching. A reminder that chat is disabled for attendees, but if you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A feature below. I would like to begin by briefly introducing Cynthia Chappell, founder of Black Girls Do STEM, who's an innovative scientist and advocate for Black girls and women and champion of equity. Cynthia, you can take it from here.
Thank you so much, Mayanne, for that introduction. I'm so excited to be here today with Dr. Nicole Joseph, Associate Professor of Mathematics at Vanderbilt University, and author of Making Black Girls Count in Math Education, a Black feminist vision for transformative teaching. So I just want to start off and sort of sharing how we get here today, Nicole and myself, having this discussion over, again, a very transformative read that is a must read for those of us who care about Black girls mathematics education. And so I am founder, managing director of Black Girls Do STEM. I am a research chemist by background, education, and training. And in doing the work of Black Girls Do STEM, right, and thinking about how we were even presenting curriculum and developing STEM workshops on behalf of Black girls and taking this integrated applied mathematics approach, I kept asking myself, who's doing this research, right? I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist. So, let's go back to the peer-reviewed articles. What is the literature saying about Black girls in mathematics, Black girls specifically educational journeys in STEM? And that is how I came across Dr. Nicole Joseph's work. And just was fascinated with so much of her publication, really being able to bring student voice into the conversation and really centering ideas around not just like what do we understand currently, but how do we move forward in practice. And at Black Girls Do STEM, we're all about doing the work, right? We're all about the practice, right, of putting these strategies in front of Black girls. And so just wanted to share how we get here, her and I having this discussion, and why I am so deeply invested in her research and so deeply invested in this work and sort of this body of literature around mathematics education for Black girls. So let's get going, Nicole.
All right, let's do it. I am doing well. I'm so excited to be here. I just love you, Cynthia, on so many levels. Just the work, the powerful work you are doing in St. Louis for Black girls is very transformative. And so I thought, who else would be amazing to be able to sit down and have this conversation about my book? So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. I'm excited to be here. I read the book and then I read it again, right? That's how good it was and how transformative it was. So I want to start this book talk with an excerpt, and it's coming from sort of the conclusion but I feel like it beautifully wrapped up the essence of the book and so much of what we're going to unpack today. So I'll start with this small excerpt of actually reading it out. Mathematics teaching and learning are political endeavors, meaning they are shaped by broader issues, such as who teaches mathematics to Black girls, what kind of curriculum the teacher uses, what mathematics teachers believe about Black girls and their families broadly, and what type of learning experiences mathematics teachers think Black girls deserve and need. Society would have us think that mathematics is neutral, that numbers are numbers and race and gender have nothing to do with learning mathematics. But the reality is when we do not politicize when we do not politicize Black girl achievement, access, learning, development, participation, we have hegemony and white supremacy undisrupted, which always provides a single story, not a nuanced narrative. When I read that passage, I was like, wow, that perfectly sums up the essence of, I feel like, everything that had been previously conveyed. And I think Dr. Adichie tells us about the danger of a single story, right?
Mhm,
And like has
mhm.
brought us back to this idea that we have to be able to have these critically nuanced conversations that are very much complex. And so just in thinking about that, what are your initial thoughts in sort of that summation passage?
Yeah, I think that's a powerful. I mean, you know how you write something and you go back and you, did I write that? And I think it does some. So mathematics, has always been a discipline that I think people just generally in society feel like you are either born with, to be able to do math, like it's
Mhm.
some type of innate type of quality or characteristic. And the fact of the matter is that that's just a lie.
Yeah.
But because of how we have socially constructed what it means to
Mm.
do mathematics, who a mathematician looks like, right? There's been a lot of folks who have just felt like I don't belong. And when we think, I've asked people in different talks that I've done, when you think of a mathematician, who do you think of? So of course, Einstein, like they list white males basically with coats on or, hair all over the head. And one talk that I gave, someone said, my granny. And it about shook me because finally someone was able to understand that, yes, we do mathematics in my home. My grandmother inspired me. I cooked with my granny. We talked about math in different ways. And so, it's about trying to disrupt
Mhm.
this socially constructed vision of who is a mathematician and who belongs in this space. And the only way to do that is to call out things that are, getting in the way of that.
Mhm.
And so there's no way to do that work in a unpolitical way, because the politics of mathematics is, essentially that it's an elite space, that it's a white and male space. And so if we're
Mhm.
going to disrupt any of that, it's going to be a political, experience, because we have to interrogate the systems that have essentially created the conditions in the first place for people to think that they don't belong, for Black girls, to feel like they don't belong.
Yeah, that's such a great point because it makes me think back to even when we finally uncovered the history of Black women in mathematics, and we had the books and the movie Hidden Figures. Even then, in that context of finally giving voice and vision to Black women, we still put it in this perspective of genius, right? In this
Yeah.
perspective, even when we are now talking about Black women and Black bodies, it's still from this perspective of like this inherent genius, even at that time. And so let's take that sort of like and talk about the historical
Yes.
aspects of mathematics education that get us here today. In the book, you talk about how like historical racism, racialized and gender oppression very much play into the current way in which mathematics education is viewed. And in order to really humanize Black girls in mathematics education, we have to address that historical oppression. Why is it so important? I just want to really get into this. Why is it so important to address the historical nature from which the current lack of representation of Black women and girls in mathematics come from, in order to truly move forward into a vision of sort of equitable access to mathematics?
Yeah. So Gloria Ladson-Billings talks about how we don't have an achievement gap, how we have a historical debt to African American people and communities. Dr. Milner talks about the opportunity gap, that basically, African American people have not really had the opportunities to be able to engage in our democracy, in our innovative technological world. in ways that are on par with other people, right? And so what I try to help my students at Vanderbilt and other places understand is that this is not a new situation. There is a whole historical legacy around how we got here. And you have to go back to the origin stories of Black people's experience in this country. So we know that it was literally illegal to learn how to read in this country. And it really wasn't that long ago. So you had like legal laws that were, disenfranchising African-American people at every turn: literacy, voting, economics, politics, everything, right? And so those are, contexts that really impacted, historical contexts that really impacted African-American people's, ability to be able to participate. So Black people are always gonna find a way, right? So if you've never read Self-Taught, it is a book by Williams. I think it's Andrea Williams or Heather Williams, but the title is called Self-Taught. And this is a Black woman historian who essentially recaptures the ways in which slaves were engaging in literacy, engaging in teaching themselves, right? And she takes us all the way up to where James Anderson, who is at Illinois, who wrote The Education of Blacks in the US context, where we see that historically Black colleges, were being built and elevated because we had institutions, particularly in the South, that did not allow African-American peoples to attend, their institutions. So I was awarded a Spencer doctoral, postdoc, I'm sorry, y'all, postdoc fellowship. And in that study, I proposed to go and seek answers to what was the math education of Blacks before segregation. And I went and sat in the archives of 25 historically Black colleges and universities across the South. And one of those institutions was Tuskegee. And when I tell you that sitting there reading the original letter that Booker T. Washington wrote to the Macon County community when he was opening up Tuskegee, I mean, I literally wept because I could feel the commitment, the passion. They started with, people were coming out of slavery. So folks they wasn't ready to read, Greek and Latin and all of that, right? So he started with like trades. So agriculture, he said, we started with agriculture because we was hungry. We needed to eat, right? So that was one of the institutions where I began to look through over time the curriculum. And one of the things that I found was that the mathematics there was really being used to help support the development of Black people's like practical understandings for like trades, different trades, those types of things, right? So the thing is that when you look historically and you understand that African Americans have never really had open access or access to the resources that this country has always, had, they've had to do what they needed to do in order to make some level of mathematics and scientific, contributions. And so the reason why it's so important is because it's like a debt, like Latson Billings said, it is a debt that this institution owes African-American communities. And we have ways to do that. But the question is, do we have the political will to actually do what we need to do in order to redress some of the historical, issues that have played in African-Americans people's, access lack of access, limited access to mathematics and sciences in the ways that other folks have had. So that's why it's super important, because we created these conditions, we as a country. So therefore, we need to disrupt and dismantle them in order to make good on, Black girls' opportunities in this country.
Yeah, so that's powerful. And I feel like every time I uncover a little bit more of history, I'm right there with you, like in that space of like just like understanding the debt and understanding the immense responsibility that we now have, right, as people who have taken up this issue of education of Black girls. But how do we get Black girls' voice and Black girls as a part of that re-understanding, or like not necessarily revisioning of history, but truth telling, right? Of like understanding the truth of that history and connecting themselves back to it. In the book, you talk about this idea of making sure that we can connect mathematics education to like deep human connections that Black girls care about, right? And so how do we get Black girls as a part of like this truth telling of that history and the advancement of their mathematics education?
Yeah, so, we need advocates. So, I'm on a campaign to develop a solidarity project with Black girls and their families to elevate their voices so that we have more nuanced information about what to do. This is why in the book, I use a lot of Black girls' voices in my own studies and in other people's studies to help us hear them. They are begging for opportunities to be able to engage in rigorous mathematics, for example. They don't want to do worksheets. Now, when I say they, let me be clear. Of course, I'm not talking about every single Black girl in this country, but Black girls that are in everyday public schools, I don't care what state you are in, that are in an under-resourced institution, worksheets and low-level teaching of mathematics is a pretty typical type of experience for a Black girl in our schools, right? The other thing is that researchers, educational researchers, I mean, this is just not something that they focus on. I mean, it's taken a long time for researchers to even engage, I think, student voice in the way that I'm talking about. It's more common to have people conduct research where they are doing interviews with students and things like that. But I'm talking about taking it to a whole nother level to where we are able to inform our teaching practices, inform policies. And when I say policies, I'm talking about various levels of policies. So policies at your school, policies in your class, policies at the state level, right? So, to me, sometimes it just feels simple, like the answers are simple, but in implementing those answers is super challenging. So getting Black girls' voices into the learning space, into the space, the policy space, is what we need to do. I just challenge you to go and just talk to some Black girls and just ask them some questions like, when was the last time that you enjoyed math? Can you tell me about that experience? What did the environment feel like? What were the kids doing? What was the teacher doing? And then like, when was the last time, or what happened? Tell me about what happened to the point where now you don't like math or you feel intimidated by math. They're gonna give you powerful answers that are gonna point to curriculum, interactions, learning environments, different policies. We have tracking, tracking. It has, is a structural system that we just cannot get rid of. And it's not just about getting rid of tracking. You can't just get rid of tracking and then, okay, we're good. No, there has to be work on the type of pedagogies, the type of learning activities that teachers are providing for Black girls. And because they suffer from the criminalization stereotypes, the adultification stereotypes, teachers sometimes internalize these things subconsciously and consciously, and they elevate an anti-intellectual sort of spirit about Black girls. When you look at Black girls and you say, oh my God, all she doing is just rolling her eyes, like she don't care, like she's just thinking about boys, she doesn't care, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is perpetuating inequality. That is perpetuating hegemonic dominance systems and structures in place, because you are constantly comparing her, expecting her to look and sound like a white girl, perhaps, or some other type of vision of what a mathematician looks like and sounds like. And I write about that in the book. It's like, we just have this vision of what it looks like. And then honestly, the way that we teach math really isn't good for a lot of students, period. And we expect students to be quiet, to be super focused, to facing forward. And those learning experiences just don't work for a large segment of our students. When you intersect race, gender, history, it becomes super consequential for Black girls. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, that was good. So going back to these mathematic learning environments, I think that's a good segue into like this idea of tracking and this low level and high level. Like we live really within the society that promotes and accepts social caste as truth. Right? We believe that there is there needs to always be a limiting factor, right? Or like there has to be this way in which we compare and differentiate amongst our children, amongst our employees, right? Like this is just a world that we live in. And so can mathematics education, or what is the vision in mathematics education, and what needs to happen by the people in power in mathematics education to truly exist freely of some of these social constructs? Is it possible?
Danny Martin would say absolutely not. It's not possible because of the racialization that is just embedded in this country. But because I am a teacher, like I was a math teacher before becoming a professor for almost 15 years. I coached other math teachers as through the lens of a math coach. And I believe that even in a broken system, we have to develop some level of hope. And this is what I mean by What About Monday? And that's my dear colleague, Toya Jones Frank. She always says, what about Monday? We can talk theory all day, but Black girls are going to show up on Monday, right? So how do we help teachers and general educators, to think about these things? And so the answer is complex. There's so many elements to it. But I always try to encourage math teachers to try to pick something and to go as deep as you possibly can. So if that something is, I'm just going to learn about Black girlhood. I'm going to learn about Black girlhood. I'm going to talk to the Black girls in my class. I'm going to read some things. So now, the internet used to be shady. Now you can actually find some solid stuff on the internet, right? But I'm just going to focus on understanding Black girlhood, especially because half my class are Black girls, right? This could be the situation of a teacher who wants to choose to do something, right? And then, I just want to listen. I'm just going to put my listening skills on and just ask the Black girls in my class, how are you experiencing my class? Do you like my class? What about my class that you like? And I'm assuming this is a math teacher, so probably, 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever, high school. But also an elementary teacher could ask about the math segment of the day. But just listen to her and see, what she says. And you can talk about process, You could talk about the actual activities that you are doing as a teacher. You can talk about outcomes. You can talk about assessments. You can talk about all of that. And I tell my students at Vanderbilt, always bring your students into the problem-solving process. This is how you're going to have a long, wonderful career. You have to let go of power, and you have to listen to your students. Because when you listen to your students, in this case, we're talking about Black girls, they are going to help you find out, what do you need to do? So you don't have to sit around trying to hit the target and think about what do I need to do. They're going to tell you. But we just, of course, don't do this. And so I just think it's important to kind of go back to, in terms of what can we do, going back to like listening to Black girls' voices, listening to their stories. They have math stories worth telling. And the ways in which we have taught math, everybody, I don't care who you are, Black, white, Asian, folks have had trauma in math, right? This is why you have people that say, oh my God, I hate math. I've never been a math person. And I always tell them that you just did not get an opportunity to really see the power of math and its relevance into your life, into who you are, right? And I have a goal. I want every Black girl to fall in love with mathematics, not because I think that it's just some discipline where, we get to sit around and do crazy problems, but I want them to feel that power for what that tool can do for their lives. And you and I both know this, Cynthia, that everything you do just about these days is going to involve some level of mathematical thinking, mathematical reasoning. I'm not suggesting that you're doing calculus every day. That's not what I'm suggesting, but I'm talking about math. Math is way more than calculations, y'all, way more than, numeracy. It's probability, it's logic, it's a lot more, and we use it every day. And so I want Black girls to have this literacy so that they can participate in our society. So that doesn't mean that I'm expecting them to go and major in math in college or in science or whatever, but even if they become this incredible artist or a stylist, whatever they want to do, math literacy skills are going to help you regardless, right? And not just soft skills or whatever, but the number of people that have strong math skills, like the jobs and the opportunities and the careers that they can engage in it's just endless, right? And people can say what they want to say, but those are the types of jobs that are really paying well. People are living well when they have these types of jobs. And I just feel like they need to have access to those opportunities. Whether they take the opportunities or not, it's completely up to them. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying, let's educate Black girls in mathematics in a way that allows them to have these opportunities.
Right. Real access. We talk a lot at Black Girls Through STEM about real access, right? And it's not real access just because you put a thing in front of me. However, you have not prepared me across a K-12 pathway to be able to really access the thing, right? And so I think back to my own mathematics journey, and I had taken all the way up to pre-calculus as a high school student. And so I got directly into the School of Science when I went to undergrad, but my math placement placed me back in like college algebra at the collegiate level before I could take Calculus 1. And I remember taking Calculus 1. I had just had like a death in the family. It was just a tumultuous time for me as a young person. And I got an F the first time I took Calc 1 in undergrad. And I tell my students this story all of the time because I went to the calculus teacher and the first mathematics educator, right? Mathematics professor, right? The people who are the folks that get to determine who's for math, right? And the first thing he said was like, oh, well, maybe you should consider a different major, right? Maybe calculus isn't for you. And I just remember that so poignantly. And then I went to my advisor, who at the time I had two different advisors because I was a double major. So I went to the one who I knew was going to be encouraging. And she was like, okay, Cynthia, so when are you going to retake calculus? Let's look at your schedule, see how we can fit this in. And not once did she question my capability and my ability to go back, redo calculus 1 and pass, because I think we had a level of relationship and she had a level of understanding that like Cynthia will get it done, and also had a level of understanding of what was happening in Cynthia's personal life that may have resulted in this big fat F at that time during my sophomore year, right? Because I didn't take it freshman year. So it just makes me also go back to like this thing in the book about like maintaining white supremacy culture is like also like the defensiveness of mathematics, right? Of like, it's so much easier to just tell a Black child or to tell a Black kid that like, oh, maybe you should think about a different major, or like rather than take the time out and do that self-work that you're calling for the educator.
And that, like, people like math professors, they really do sometimes feel like they're doing what's best. Like, I don't want you to flunk the class, so maybe this is just not the right major. But you know whose work, if you haven't read it, Luis Leiva's work, who he's breaking ground in this area, because we don't often understand higher ed teaching spaces, mathematics. And so he's giving us insight into racialized and gendered students that are in different math majors or STEM majors, how that type of comment is actually landing on someone who is racialized and gendered, right? So while the professor is believing that, they're doing the right thing, they're looking out for the student, they are receiving it exactly like how you received, like, wow, I don't belong in here. I don't belong here. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Wow, this makes me feel like I'm stupid. All of these different ways that it lands. And that's one of the biggest problems with mathematics as a discipline. It's taught as, is that a word? Taught as neutral. That it has nothing to do with social issues. But the reality is that even if a pedagogy, for example, or a curriculum is quote unquote neutral, the minute you begin teaching, it becomes political, because the way that you teach, the opportunities that you provide, what you get exposed, the hidden curriculum, the intended curriculum, all of that becomes political, right? And so one of the ways that I often, when I do talks with math professors in math departments, I just do something simple, like think about the hallways in your department. Look on the walls. Who do you see on the walls, right? Look at the textbooks. Who do you see in these textbooks? So they are discovering, wow, well, all I see are white males. So if you have individuals, both, so racialized, Black and brown people or whatever, who are trying to be in these spaces, these walls are talking to them. Our curriculum is talking to them implicitly, right? That it's just, and Janine Remillard at Penn, talks about how curriculum developers, they never have pronouns in the curriculum. It's just unspoken. So people just think that it's common, it's taken for granted, but that curriculum represents the values, interests, commitments of the folks that wrote it. So the people that have written it are usually white males, right? Or white people. And so they're not thinking about all of the other cultures and ethnicities and, you know what I mean, when they're developing these curriculum. And that has been one of the most powerful ways that I feel like mathematicians have been able to connect to the things that I'm saying, is that they're looking at their walls, something basic, to see who are they talking to. And then for white students, white male students, they are being reinforced. Those walls are reinforcing to them that you belong here, right? So if we care about social justice, we have to disrupt some of that, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like these new studies on belonging and African American and Latino student retention and higher ed is like increasingly coming out more and more and saying exactly that, right? This idea of this lack of affirming, validating academic spaces, right? And so rather than encouraging you and understanding why you may have not done so well this first go around, there's almost this instantaneous decision to sit and consult you on what may be a better path for you instead. And so I think that definitely goes into that sort of like reinforcement of like, maybe you really don't belong here. I know I felt like that as a chemistry student in undergrad, as a chemistry graduate student at times, right, of just my own educational journey. And so we have questions in the chat. And so I'll go ahead and I'll jump into one of the first questions that we have in the chat. And it says, how has the current devaluing of mathematics in higher ed, i.e. Harvard removing math requirements from gen ed, Marymount U eliminating math majors, affects students, particularly young Black girls, from pursuing math?
So I wasn't aware of these developments that places like Harvard and Marymount, and there could be others, are eliminating math majors. I wasn't aware of that. However, you know, we have to get them there. The K-12 space has a lot of work because, you know, we need to fix the issues that are in K-12 before they even get there. I feel like if Black girls get to undergraduate degrees in mathematics or science, let alone a master's degree or a PhD, and I know a lot of the Black women who have PhDs in pure mathematics, some of them are my good colleagues. Once they get there, they kind of already have like an identity already, and a deep enough interest, I think, in the topic to have sort of mastered or at least navigated the K-12 system in a way that tells them that, you know what, I do belong here. This is something that I love. I'm going to do it. So that it's the K-12 space that I think we really need to work on so that when they graduate, they do see math major or some other STEM, you know, math-based STEM major, engineering, computer science, whatever, as an option. So yeah, sorry, I don't have a better answer for that.
Yeah. And then I want to read one other one and then hop back to a different question I might have. But while engaging at the Spencer Foundation and learning about the work at Tuskegee Institute, did you find curriculum that focused on science? And for context, this participant has focuses on the legacy of Black education pre-Brown and what that means for science education today, but has not found a lot of the findings that discuss that.
Yeah, so there's still not a lot of secondary sources available for the history of African Americans in science. So you are going to need to probably engage in primary sources. Primary sources are going to the archives. I would say places like North Carolina A&T, FAMU were, you know, basically scientific powerhouses in their origins, to think about science. But then Tuskegee, what's the guy's name? The peanut, the Black man, the agriculture. George Washington Carver, right, was at Tuskegee. Yeah, right. Was at Tuskegee and, you know, definitely engaged in the science of agriculture and things like that. I was pretty much trying to just focus on math, but I believe that if you were to, you know, visit the archives there in Tuskegee, you would see definitely some things around science. probably even more,
Mhm.
because he was there for a long time. I did read some of his things that he published. I did read some of George Washington Carver's publications, and the publications then, which was also something that
Mhm.
I spoke to in the paper that I wrote about this study, is that he didn't have access to the scientific journals that white scientists were publishing in, because again of racism. They would not publish his work. So he wrote like these bulletin type of situations where he would be publishing the findings of things that he was finding in his scientific work. One of the other powerful things that they did at Tuskegee is they had something called the movable school. So they would have their students go around the county to farmers and actually teach those farmers the new methodological strategies for agriculture. It was so powerful to learn about this movable school idea, because it's actually giving me inspiration for a project that I'm thinking about in the future. But that was very powerful in that, they were focusing on science. And so I guess my short answer is yes, but you're going to have to go into the archives. There still really isn't a lot on scientific access of African Americans prior to, Brown versus Board.
Yeah, thank you for that. So that hops me right into my next inquiry concerning Brown versus Board, right? And so in your final chapter, Teachers Who Are Willing to Go for Broke, we talk a lot about just like the historical understanding of Brown versus Board. And in America and in history, we see that as an accomplishment. The Brown versus Board decision, which led to integration of schools, and what we thought would be equal education for all. But we know that Brown versus Board, which is often not discussed, which you discuss heavily in your book, displaced lots of Black educators, right, who then were not allowed to teach at white schools during the integration of education in America. And so understanding that Black children, I think you said, are 9% more likely, if just having a Black educator as young as kindergarten, to graduate high school, et cetera. And then those statistics continue to evolve. Knowing the impact of just having a Black educator on Black children, what do you say now, post-integration, 60 years later, about the Brown versus Board decision, just in the context of education?
Yeah, so there have been a lot of scholars that have actually written about what I would call the complexities of Brown, because on the one hand, it was definitely major legislation that I think we needed as a country, and African Americans specifically needed, in order to open up access, to be able to get access to more resources. At the same time, we know that you can't just move children without doing any work around the psyche, around like just physical proximity of kids in rooms with white teachers who did not want to teach them, right? These teachers did not want them in their classes. They didn't want their own kids going to school with them. Just the level of hate was just, unreal. So and then because of that, a lot of African American teachers, thousands, tens of thousands, lost, their jobs. And so this is why my answer to that is that it's very complex, because clearly there were some good things that came out of that, but the consequences, the negative things that have come out of that they just reverberate, I mean, here it is 2023. And we still have some counties and cities that have like desegregation cases on their books, the courts, and so, it's just an issue that is so steeped in I think the dispositions, the thoughts of people in this country, that are just I don't know if it's just fear, like of letting go of power so that other folks can have access, African-American students can have access. So, I think that legislation was complex. And there definitely have been some things that have not served us well because we do not have a robust system of Black teachers, in our district. And if you want to read something, there was a case in Louisiana that was like in the late 90s where they were trying to increase the number of African-American teachers. I'm sure if you Google it, it will come up, but that was like an actual legislation. It worked to a certain extent, but just like everything else, benchmarks get moved and, the challenges actually, came back. So it's just a complex situation, the Brown versus Board of Education. That's how I will answer that. So
yeah. In St. Louis, post the Ferguson uprising and the murder of Mike Brown, there was this thing created called the Ferguson Commission. They actually issued a really intricate report of Brown versus Board, and it was called Still Separate, Still Unequal. And it literally just cataloged the educational inequity just prevalent right now today in our St. Louis region. And so that's another like really quick, easy read that if you want to sort of like understand some of the critique, good and bad, that folks are having, I think, around Brown as well.
Someone asked about the scholar that I mentioned. I believe it was Luis Leiva, Leyva. He's writing about teaching and learning spaces in higher education. And he pretty much focuses on undergraduate education. So that was a quick one. I think that was a question in the thing.
Yeah, it was a question. Yeah, if we go back to the chat questions, we have another one that I want to make sure I don't skip around and miss. That's really just about like wondering how you maintain care for yourself as you engage in this work in climates like academia that can particularly be problematic towards Black women.
Yeah, it's called a community. It's called a community. It's called being grounded in who you are. When I tell you that, you have to know who you are, you have to be solid. So when the wind and the noise and all of the issues around these ideas come, you might sway like this, but your feet are planted. And I think the one thing about me is that I don't make this work about me. This is not about Nicole Joseph. This is about how and why I know I have been placed on this planet, which is to help make this world just a teeny little bit better for Black girls, right? And I know my own lane, and that is the work that I am going to do until God calls me home and y'all bury me in the ground. So, that is how I stay engage in self-care. My joy does not come from noise. My joy comes from within. I know why I am here. And so when you know why you're here and why you are doing the work that you're doing, it doesn't mean that, you don't get hurt or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like, this is the work that you're doing. And anybody that's doing work on behalf of racialized communities, just have to understand that this comes with the territory, in large part because of the place that we live. But I never have, and I never will walk in fear. That ain't happening. So, I just surround myself with powerful women, other Black women generally, that love on me, encourage me, and I do the same for them. So it's not a one-way ticket. It is reciprocity in this work. And so I would encourage you all to find your people, the coalition, and lean on each other. And guess what? Take some naps and rest. That's
Take
another, that's another
Take
thing
some
we
naps.
need.
I have started taking lots of naps. And also to echo that, I just reached out and Nicole said yes, right? So like really practice the community, right? Because sometimes your people gonna find you if it's truly the passion work and the kindred spirit of like, we care about this deeply, right? And that grounding is powerful. So one more, I think we may have time for one more chat question. Has there been any impact currently in your work by the movements to suppress the study of Black history at U.S. schools and universities, specifically the history of math education at HBCUs? Prior to desegregation is very powerful for students and teachers to learn. So do you see this new movement, to ban AP African American studies in the state of Florida and elsewhere? Do you see that impacting the history of math education being taught?
No, because people aren't, they don't make those connections. They just don't. So that can be a good thing for folks, those of us that are trying to do like the history, of math education, through the Black perspective, because it's just not on people's radar to think about this. But I bet you if people taught these African-American history courses in ways that infused math and science, see, that's the way it should be done, but that's not how they do it, right? That would be a whole nother conversation. But because they don't, it's like they see it as separate, or it's just not, even other Black scholars, it's not necessarily on their radar to think about the role of mathematics and science in the larger history of Black history, right? So,
yeah. So not primarily affecting sort of that math education history. I have one comment that says, I became a math teacher because my daughter's situation in 8th grade, where she was making all A's but could not solve an equation. Her math instructor did not pay attention to her. Besides becoming a Black educator, what else can parents do to help girls excel mathematically?
So I remember during COVID, I was doing some parent, hosting parent sessions with my colleague at MTSU. And I actually put out I have a document. And it's not all pretty, but if this person wants to email me to get that, I will, because it's a lot of stuff. But, to me, it's like, try to normalize mathematics in your lives, right? So having conversations about pulling out the math in whatever it is that you are doing, from, planning an event to, remodeling the kitchen to, paying the bills every month, like, just try to normalize math thinking, right? So that's like one sort of thing. I think another thing is getting our girls involved in informal learning spaces, such as Black Girls Do STEM, because I'm telling y'all, the juice is happening in informal learning spaces. There's another one in Atlanta, Georgia, that my colleague Jaquita Thomas is doing. She is a computer scientist. She got National Science Foundation money and has been supporting Black girls in game design, social justice game design, for like almost 10 years. We've written about this because all 23 of the girls that she started with in middle school are in college, and all 23 are majoring in some type of STEM major. And it's all because when she did her program, everything, which is very similar to what Cynthia does in her program, everything about the program was Black woman centered. So when speakers would come, they were Black women. The helpers or the, the volunteers were Black women. The curriculum was connected to Black women. I mean, when young Black girls can see a vision of who they can be, starting with even like high school girls participating. Cynthia, I think some of your girls, don't they come back?
Continue through. Yep.
Yeah. So, seeing a vision of who they can be across generations, because we understand that like mentor being way out there just seems so far.
So cool.
But you and Jaquita's program, and there might be others, have figured out a way to make this intergenerational so that these mentors and these role models are way closer to girls. But I just feel like the informal learning environments that are Black girl focused, and now it's not uncommon. I mean, you have philanthropists, folks giving money all day long to engage in some of these types of things. Get them involved in those things. And then get to the schools, start having conversations with the math teacher. And with your daughter, and help your daughter learn how to advocate as a solidarity project, because we have to hold each other accountable. And if they're trying to put your daughter in a lower level class, fight that and try to get her in an advanced class, but also have a courageous conversation, a transparent conversation about why this is actually important. She may not understand every single thing, but helping her to understand this larger structure that we are in and what those consequences are and what it takes away from her future opportunities is really important. So those are a few things, but I'm happy to email that document to that parent.
Yeah, I think we have just one question that we probably won't get to, so maybe we'll email out or put that response when the live is posted. But this has been such a great discussion, Nicole. Thank you so much for this work, for your commitment to the math education of Black girls. And also just thank you to Harvard for having us in the library to be a part of this book talk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I just dropped some information into the chat, and everyone will be getting an automated email tomorrow with all of this information as well. Thank you so much, Cynthia and Nicole. This was so important and so informative. Thank you.
Thank you.